and gentlemen, meet my dear friend and America's technologist, Mark Stross. Mark, thank you for being here. I'm so glad to have you.
Well, thank you, Kim. It's really good to be here tonight and to share with anyone who's really willing to listen, tips on digital hygiene and how to really protect themselves in the digital space. I think it's especially after the leak that just happened with Social Security numbers. I just covered that today in my morning radio show. I think we've had a breach with a data broker, and that data broker basically lost about 2.9 billion files. And that included social security numbers and everything on every American. So tonight, when you're watching this, I want everyone to realize I'm not just speaking to scare you because I don't like to do that. I think, you always have to always show hope. But what we're going to discuss are items that most of us just take for granted. And we think we're protected if we have a password. But the truth is, we're not. We have to worry about data breaches today, malware. You have to worry about social engineering. There's so many areas today where you have to protect yourself that it's no longer just a teeny topic. It's actually a much more complicated topic with many layers. So I'm grateful to have this platform that I share with you from time to time to explain this. But the most important part of what I'm trying to explain is not to scare, but to get people to do certain actions that will massively protect them in the future. And I think this is super important and it's too easy to take this for granted until you have a data breach as large as the one that just happened. Then you take that data breach and you apply it to people's lives. And how many people will be wasting time trying to either get back their identities or actually having been affected by the data breach, being victims of it? That's sad to me. I think we need to help people not be victims.
Absolutely. I think we're also very desensitized to the risks in our online world. So, in your opinion, what's one of the biggest misconceptions about digital safety and why could it be harmful?
Well, right now, digital safety is more than just one thing. If you want to be digitally safe, you're going to have layers. And those layers will actually be what protects you. So for me, for example, I would, well, first of all, we'll just talk about the big, the big issue. Most people do not have a unique password on all of their accounts. They usually share passwords and multiple accounts have the same passwords. Now, that's great, and it's easy for the end user to remember that, but if you get breached and you only have one password and um, one unique setup for what your life is, then it can all be taken down with just your few set of passwords or whatever you're using. So one thing I advocate for is you should have every account should have a unique password. That way, if you get breached in one account, the perpetrator has no way to get into anything else. It stops at the one account. And that is the first thing that I ask people to do is change all of their passwords. It's very funny. The day I was on the air and the main DJ, Bulldog, just basically said, well, I have like 129 different passwords that I have to remember. And that's a big tall order to change all of them to different passwords. And my suggestion to him was, though, but if you get breached in any one of these, the amount of time you'll spend trying to get your data back will be is much more than if you just take the time to go down and change 129 passwords. So I would say to everyone, you're going to either deal with this on the end of a cyber attack, or you would deal with it by you just having proper digital hygiene. And it starts with passwords being all unique. Can't hear you.
Oh, I was muted. So I absolutely agree with that. You talk a lot about layered solutions where there's not one foolproof solution or this magic tech solution to all our problems. When we're talking about protecting children on the internet, especially with that aspect of things, I couldn't agree with you more. So there again are a lot of misconceptions about something solving a problem or being the end all be all of online safety. So in your opinion, can you tell us a little bit more about some of these security measures that are being proposed right now and whether or not you see them as an effective solution or what the effective solutions you see are when it comes to digital safety?
Well, if I had children today, um, three things I would immediately do is first of all is I would have a dialogue with the children and be very involved in their digital world, meaning I would know every app, everything that is on their phones or in their iPads that you give them. And when you give them any pad, including Androids, what's important is you get involved in their activities. You understand the activities. You go into the same chat forums they go into. Take a look at their posts. And if you see things you don't like, don't immediately start um, fussing at them or yelling. Instead, what I suggest is start to seek understanding and give them a time for self-correction, correct them back into good behavior. The reason this is important is children today have the world at their fingertips, so they can always find an opposing view to yours. And that's what they're going to rely on to justify whatever they're doing against your will. So what you don't want to have is a battle of will. What you actually want to have is a dialogue with them. You want them to be involved. And what I try to say to parents that ask me this is become their accountability partner, but have them also look at your phone. Now, this is where it gets really tricky,
Mm-hmm.
and parents usually look at me and go, no way. Well, this is the deal. The truth is, if you're willing to be accountable to your children, that will increase the actual probability that they're going to be accountable back. So I really recommend this first technique. And I know this is the one that is not technologically bound. Second one is I would definitely put an app on the phone to actually monitor all the children's activities. And Kim, you know some of
Mm-hmm.
those apps, and I'm going to let you name some of them because it's something you've actually been working with.
Mm-hmm.
But those apps are great, but the problem is we know some kids are very tech savvy and will jump over them by going either to a friend's house or using a VPN or other forms of by extension, they just figure out ways around these apps that try to lock the kid down into a playground that you set up for them. Well, the problem is that you might lock the playground down, but understand when your child goes to school, he gets access to people's phones that are not broke or that are not locked down and might get right back on and do everything that you don't want them to do. That is why I always advocate that it's a layered approach because you also want to have a relationship with your children. You want to see what they're actually looking at as much as you have an app on there to put them into your world, your worldview too, all the apps you approve. And then finally, the third one, and this is a super important side to this, which is everyone in the family has to, in my opinion, have an occasional technology day where everyone talks about digital hygiene. For example, email fifing. That is when someone attacks you trying to send you an email or a text. It can be text fifing, and where basically texts are sent and they're trying to solicit you to give up personal information. And it will usually be like your water bill's unpaid, your internet bill's not paid, Wells Fargo you owe money to, or something just weird. But the bottom line is, so many people fall for these attempts in texts, and kids can fall for them too. And before you know it, you're entering information you shouldn't be entering. And these are really bad actors. And once they get that information, they use it against you. So it's super important that you never just plunge in on emails or on text and give private information out. I always recommend that you call the companies and make sure that it's legitimate what you're doing, but be very careful. Don't rely on texts and emails any longer to be truly factual. The way they hack the email systems can look so legitimate, and it's very easy to fall for it. So I say check with the company by phone first before you do anything. Kim, what do you think of that?
I agree. I know someone who recently had their bank accounts wiped because of a similar type of hack. But like you said, it's less of a technological gap and more of us being hasty, having busy lives, and not necessarily taking notice of ways that we're being taken advantage of. So I love your balanced approach, as always, where you have this extensive knowledge of technology and you're very realistic about the risks and the solutions. But there's also so much that's required of us as humans, and we can't take ourselves out of the equation, whether it's parents protecting children, whether we're relying on parental control apps, which we do recommend that parents use. However, it's not a replacement for parenting or for oversight or for communication and prevention. So some of those apps that we recommend, based on our research, we found that SpyX and Bark have some of the most comprehensive safeguards for parents that are monitoring their children's devices. We have links and more information to them on our website. But again, we want to urge parents and caretakers and anybody who has children in their lives that it does take all of us to really be there physically, to be present with our children, and to be involved, like Mark Stross said, to really know their digital world and be involved in it.
Absolutely. There's no substitute to getting involved. I I just wrote a book, Kill the Tech and the Drive to Save Humanity, and it's available everywhere. It's really cool that in the book, I cited examples of what happened with my family and what happened to other people. And to realize that today you have Zuckerberg actually getting up and admitting, for example, that he was pressured to actually censor people. And also, he got up formally to actually apologize to parents. Now, I understand these things were done under duress, but what's important is we're starting to wake up to a reality that big tech and all of us have a responsibility. It's not just us and it's not just the parents, but it's also big tech. It's also the world. It's all of us. And one of the areas that we're just a little shy on, and I'm sad about this, because we have now politically deadlocked ourselves as a country to where we no longer can have these really important conversations to protect our kids. Because unfortunately, as soon as you get into some of the topics, it becomes very political. So, what I want to do is stop this dead in its tracks. We're not going to do politics. We are going to do solutions. We are going to talk to people, and we want people to talk to us back, educate us, explain how and what we can do to protect not just our children, but all of us. And one thing is important is that I'm an immigrant to the United States. I was born in England, grew up in Switzerland, and then transferred to high school here. That's why I have very little accent. But because of my strange and extraordinary circumstances, which is in the book, and you guys can look me up and find that out. But in those extraordinary circumstances, I literally got to see the world. And we're so lucky to live in this incredible country. It, I hope that we can start to have dialogue with each other and actually start solving these issues. So when we talk about a multi-layered approach, I'm also talking about everyone I'm speaking to tonight, all of you guys. You're the approach. You are the solution. Because if each and everyone listening to us would just go to their local schools, the ISDs, and find out what are they doing to protect children. Then you move up to the local town and the mayor and town meetings, and then you move up the ladder to state meetings, and then you move eventually one day to the federal level. The thing is, if you want to change your community and protect your children, you have to do it at a local level. You have to do it super local, then you move out and out and out and out. And you can do a lot. And actually, it's very interesting because activism today has become basically the norm. People love to be activists and actually activate. But the truth is, we're not doing it in harmony to actually make results occur. I think it's really interesting, but if we really look at our activism, we're actually hitting each other over the heads with two by fours. We're not actually solving problems. That's because we're not talking to each other. We're just going whack.
Mm, completely agreed. So, what are some ways that more experts can work together or at least be willing to come together to solve problems?
Well, I don't have a perfect solution for that last question. That was an awesome question because that's what we're trying to do. So for me, I'm getting real by not just writing a book, but starting to work with you on podcasts and other people. We're going to start a dialogue podcast to actually highlight this and bring in incredible people and talent. And I think that ultimately it's really up to finding people that are true warriors in the dialogue. And, I'm just going to tease this out. We're going to have people that have really felt and been victims in the digital cyberspace lead the dialogue and actually turn our lives into solutions. And I think that is really one of the most beautiful things I can actually help do is make us all solution bound instead of us being complainers. So we all do have responsibility. So for example, if you're an aunt, you're a grandparent, you're responsible also. If you see children that are completely addicted to their phones and they're disrespectful when you walk into the room and they can't socialize because they have just been given a tablet, then instead of speaking to the children, it's time to speak to the mom and dad. That's another thing that's
Mm,
interesting. We always speak to the children, but we don't actually speak to the source. The problem is not the children. The problem is how we identify with them, and we can do a much better job. The way we do a better job is we get more honest. Now, one thing, and it's true, in this modern world, if we want to get ahead on a podcast, if you want to actually become an influencer, you have to really talk about happy things and not take on heavy duty issues. So what I've decided is that what we're going to do, Kim, is we're going to actually make this much lighter. We are not going to be that intense place you come because that's not working. All that is doing is riling people up. It's getting people actually canceled, and it's not going to help anyone's cause. We have to keep this solution based. We have to make sure that people see positivity, that it is possible to change America without changing politics, without bringing any of that in. Changing America would be protecting our children from losing their innocence. And innocence, once lost, is forever and it's instant.
mm,
People really think about that. When a child gets on the internet, you give them a mobile device or a computer and they log on. They instantly have the world at their doorstep. That is from poor all the way to the most glorious, incredible things that this world has to offer. All there. And you know what? Right now, we created this incredible World Wide Web, but we really didn't think about how to gate, keep, or do age verification, did we? So until there's an age verification system, it's going to be very difficult to prevent kids from seeing things they shouldn't see. But you know what? If you start to use the layered approach that I'm talking about, you can maybe keep your children safe. And I consider this the soda analogy because I always know, and I love this. People always say to me, but Mark, we can't save all the children. It's impossible. So why try? It's too hard. It just will never happen. Can you know my perspective on that? No, 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 no. Guys, listen. Cigarettes. We have not abolished cigarettes, but we've certainly had a decline in cigarette use, and many people have had their lives saved and been addict or addiction free because of the cigarette campaigns. Soda. Um, we, for a while, went a little bit crazy on drinking soda in this country, and we realized that wasn't so beneficial. So we've backed off on soda usage. Now people go to different waters, but that's a different problem altogether. We always have our addictions. But the thing is that we must understand that I feel it's a win if I save a majority of the children. I can't save all of the children.
I think saving
And
100 children still matters. I think people with that perspective of the world should connect a little closer with the children in their communities and their neighborhoods. Because, as you said, although we're not trying to be dramatic about this issue and we are not dramatizing it, this is something we want people to take seriously. And we want people to be connected to the concept that, like Mark is saying, children cannot unsee inappropriate content. They cannot regain their innocence once it's lost. And there is the cost of innocence is invaluable. So if you could prevent 10 children from trauma and from a lifelong of having to heal from that, to me, that's absolutely worth it.
I, you said it so beautifully. Moving forward, um, what can you really do to protect yourselves today? Um, I feel very strongly that today it is important that everyone actually realize that the odds of you not getting hacked in your lifetime is probably pretty small. Because if you think about it, when a when a big data farm has been breached by a hacker, which just happened with the Social Security deal, when that data farm has been hacked, it's really a personal hack to you because your data was in there. So you might not realize it, but all of you have been hacked. Every single person that we're speaking to right now that I'm looking at has been hacked. And I find that insane. Absolutely insane. So
So you
the
talk a lot
idea,
about data and the value of data. I want people to really connect with what you're saying. So we've all been hacked. Let's say that I personally don't know of any hacking of my information, but explain more about what that means and how that affects us.
so hackers, hackers actually do profiling. So they're going to go after people that are the easiest targets. So Kim, you're not the easiest target because you're tech savvy. Um, and they probe. They probe your devices. For example, when you get a text, how do they do your phone number? Well, the data broker might have had your phone number. So now they're texting you because they know what your name is. Have you not had some of those creepy texts where they actually know your name
Oh,
and
for
everything and offer you a
sure.
job or
Texting
whatever?
calls all
Where did that come from?
the
Data broker. Absolutely. Um, or your stuff was sold. It's just the same, actually, because you didn't realize that you had given permission for this data broker to have so much information on you. We take so much for granted. There is a whole industry behind social media and behind everything. For example, Visa and all the credit card companies, they actually either buy data on our habits or they sell data on our habits. And if how many people really look at all the disclosure forms before we actually just sign up for stuff? We give away so much, and then we're a little bit surprised when these data brokers know everything about us. So anyway, we've all been hacked. So now that we've established that I guess that baseline, let's build the baseline up like Lego. We're going to put some parts on top of each other. So today, I hope that everyone listening to us will actually start to realize that it's time for you all to, first of all, work on your passwords. Every password should be unique on every account you have. I don't care how many accounts you have. Go through it once. You will never have to do it again because every account, you just change those passwords when needed. And it's one at a time. And you use accounts one at a time. So once you've caught up and you have all your passwords different, that are all different, you are ahead of the game. Number two, um, it is true that if you're really worried about being hacked, you can use LifeLock, Aura, and some other companies to actually make sure that there's no data theft. I use LifeLock personally because um, I want to make sure that I am monitoring all of my accounts. And it's been very beneficial because it has protected me when I had a wallet stolen when we were away once and they took care of everything. So then I was asked, well, you have all your data with LifeLock, so how do you know they won't get hacked? Well, actually, I don't. But LifeLock has promised that all our data is encrypted. So when NeverPass was actually broken into, the crooks got all the files of everyone who had that had that password protector, but the passwords never got compromised because each piece of data from each client was encrypted. So even though they broke in, what was really cool was they didn't get any data because of the encryption. So that hopefully is how LifeLock and all these other companies that pride themselves on security are doing that kind of technology. So when you make a link to the website to them and back, there's an encryption key that keeps being passed between each entity. And if it's done correctly, you have all the encryption keys to open your account. Because these companies are not interested in knowing your passwords. They're interested in being a solid vault where your passwords reside. So
Mm,
what I want you to appreciate is if technology is done right, there's no reason for these data breaches to be so inclusive. So NPD, the company that the data breach for the Social Security passwords is going to be sued right now by many players because people are saying you were not sufficiently worrying about our data and you should have done more to protect it.
interesting. So, question: what is the responsibility, in your opinion, of the tech giants like Google and Meta to secure our data, and how much of that is our responsibility? And then a follow up question to that is, you talk a lot about data privacy and the need for a digital bill of rights. Can you explain more about why that's needed and what it would do?
Yeah, you know, the digital bill of rights um, and where we're going with data in general is this idea that, and you've probably heard this slogan, get used to it, you will own nothing and be happy. Um, well, I'm not happy. I do want to own stuff, and I do believe we can own digital things in the digital space. Cryptocurrency, NFTs, that's the idea of owning images in the digital um, space, has been proven that we can do this type of technology. So in my future world, we will have digital rights, and those rights will extend to digital ownership, and then we will own stuff in the digital world. So when you, for example, buy a computer game on any platform, you will then have the license transferred to your wallet, your ownership wallet. And with encrypted keys, the same type of technology that cryptocurrency uses, you would have a ledger in the digital space, and that ledger, a huge big file of what everyone owns, and you can actually transact. You could sell your ownership to someone else. They don't want to bring this back. These licensing companies, distribution and game distribution, because they make a lot of money right now. But the truth is, we have lost something. It's a little infuriating to realize that in the digital world today, if you want to take down an image on Facebook, you don't have that ability. You can delete it, but Facebook still has the image. And ultimately, this idea that if you made a mistake when you were a young kid and someone tagged you, that means they just identified you in their picture. An employer, even though it's not on your sites, could find that picture because you were tagged and you might not get a job. You could be in a bar with you doing no social media whatsoever, and someone is in the background shooting something completely different, and you still get tagged in the photograph doing something stupid, and that affects your life in the future. I believe that's the kind of stuff that you should be able to appeal and bring those items down. You cannot be in such a restrictive culture that if we make mistakes, those mistakes instantly get us canceled. And that is why I think we need a digital bill of rights. We should own our likeness. And tech companies shouldn't be profiting from free content that we give them without having a set of rules that allow us to also own the content we give them, and we have the right to rescind the usage of that content on demand.
I absolutely agree with that. So, what responsibilities do the tech giants have when it comes to not only safeguarding their users, but specifically protecting children? We're talking about all these very extensive safeguards and technologies that these platforms deploy. So, my question always comes back to then why aren't they protecting children?
I think the platforms would say, to keep it light, they'd say, well, we are doing some, and they are doing some. But then we go to, are they doing enough? Absolutely not.
Mm.
So the balance they've got today is that they are so scared to close things down. And this is the same in the porn industry, all the way over to Meta, all the way over to banks, etc. It's this idea of people don't like giving up too much of their identity. So if you put up guardrails and you ask someone then to sign in with their driver's license to verify their age, most Americans don't want to do that. Now, what's interesting is that's because most Americans have habits and they don't want to reveal what their habits are, and they don't want to leave trails of where they've been, and they don't want to be embarrassed by whatever they're into. But we're not being honest with ourselves. It is because we don't want to be embarrassed, and it is because we're doing those habits. We're actually violating and hurting our children, because what we're doing is we're making excuses for our own adult habits. And because we have adult habits, we are extending the same latitude of access to children that lose their innocence. It's actually pretty perverse if you think about it. We have bad habits online, and then we actually surrender those rights to our children for them to just see whatever we can see. Think
So,
about that for a second.
I, I agree that there's a lot of controversy around some of these topics, and there's the issue of privacy and freedom of speech, and then there's the issue of protecting children, and then there's data privacy and is it even safe to upload my driver's license or government ID in order to access a site. So, question for you as a technologist: let's say I'm trying to access Meta, in other words, a platform I'm not embarrassed of, a platform I have no hidden secrets on, and a platform that should be considered, I'm going to pause before I even say this, trustworthy in the sense of it already knows everything about me. I'm pretty sure it already knows my government information. Is it safe in your opinion? Would it be a better idea for all these platforms to require us to submit a government ID in order to access them and verify our age? Or is there a better or more layered solution?
I think where we are with the discourse, in the general discourse between people, I think right now no one's going to surrender their ID easily. You only get a small percentage of people that are willing to adhere to that. I think we're very paranoid right now as a country, very angry at each other
I
about
agree. But
that.
as a technologist, would you even recommend that? Is it recommended to do that
No,
on
I
platforms?
think we can get much smarter. We use the same crypto technology type of anonymous verification. And I think we have to come up with an anonymous verification scheme with AI and also with our products. Like, for example, I'm doing this Instagram live stream tonight directly from my cell phone. And my cell phone could anonymously tell a site where it could just interrogate the cell phone, or i.e. interrogate your laptop, and just say this simple question: is this person 18 or over? Now, of course, we know kids can break into someone's laptop, but let's just assume that if you're in your account, it's you. Now, remember the soda deal before someone says, well, this is not foolproof. No, it isn't foolproof, but it's a heck of a lot better to put up some gates with anonymous verification and do our best job, but I don't believe it's a full-blown shield. I believe it's just another layer. So I want to make this clear. I don't want people trying to find um, negatives towards all of these ideas. Now, please give me new ideas and greater ideas. I'm all in. But what I want people to realize is we're not going to make a full end-to-end solution anytime soon. We don't have the will, the technology, and we're not going to get anything done worldwide. So what I would like to do is have the devices, the mobile devices that are sold worldwide, adapt an age verification scheme that's anonymous by default so that all cell phones will know if a child's using it or if an adult's using it. And that's the simple question that has to be answered without giving away any personal information. So that's just one area. The cell phone could be one area that does that. And then there's other places. We could also do that um, with an encrypted password that is actually, or a token, or something that is actually generated through either AI or something where you're using advanced technologies to actually create this anonymous shield, but make it very efficient. And I'm trying to keep it light, but there's AI is going to allow us to do some pretty magical
Mhm.
things. And
Absolutely.
I think if we use the AI to protect the children, it will be a huge start.
Mhm.
And it's a really interesting. If you go to AI today and you ask it about how to protect the children, it already knows the really big topics that we all need to worry about. And you can instantly get a search and say how to protect the children online, and it will tell you immediately what you need to just be thinking about. So, what I want people to realize is that there's going to be some real advantages in the future towards using the tools we now have to protect children. So, those layers will become tighter and more intermeshed. And eventually, you will create a shield because AI will help us bring together the different layers
Yeah,
by joining all the information together.
I love.
But
I
but
think
I want to
one
make it clear.
of the
Go
well,
ahead, Kim.
just one more layer to add to our toolbox, and I would love your perspective on this, is the facial recognition. So a lot of, for example, dating apps use this to make sure people aren't catfishing with fake photos. They make you verify with facial recognition to make sure you match the photo of your profile pictures or your profile. I think a similar approach could work with verifying whether or not you're an adult or a child, because those are accurate enough to be able to see whether or not you were using filters or makeup, or whether you're a different facial structure. What do you think about that layer?
Well, with the definition of cameras today on mobile phones getting to the point that they're just solidly good, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
all my wrinkles and everything of my beautiful aged life is visible, and you can immediately see my age. So, yes, apps could determine people's age. So, I believe that is the future. But again, the most important thing is people get freaked out when you say camera, meaning, oh, well, then they're going to grab that image and hold on to that image. So I'm busted. So the type of technologies I've been thinking about have nothing to do with cameras, just to keep visual images out. But if we're going to be mature about this, it is important that we start to put children before us. And I believe giving up some of our what we consider privacy so that we can have our own habits is not fair to the children. So
Mm.
I'm calling every American to really think about what I'm saying here. We adults can have any habits we want to have. I want to keep this super positive because I don't think every habit's bad.
Right.
But those habits are not good for young minds, undeveloped brains. And we give the world to these undeveloped brains. And then when it goes wrong, we look at each other and go, wow, well, that wasn't good. But we don't actively want to actually fix it. Because most of the time when we talk about the fixes, like changing all our passwords, building layers, putting Bark or other apps on kids' phones to actually protect them, it's effort. And most of us don't put the
Right.
effort in.
It is.
And especially the real-time sync, which is to know your kids' activities and be on their phones, in their apps, in their chat rooms, getting to know their friends. Yes, and being a little intrusive, but at the same time, if you're cool about it and you are actually excited and you're not lecturing, you can actually find out a lot. And then you can actively campaign against things you don't like because you can explain to the children that you don't like it. Well, no, differently. Why
Right.
they should be aware of your
Harmful.
concerns and wage a campaign and convince them so they don't rebel and go to the World Wide Web and find an opposing view to you on YouTube and basically go, okay, well, I know you're wrong, mom and dad. I'm going to do it anyway. If we really want that to stop in this new era where kids can have the world's knowledge at their fingertips and look up stuff with AI faster than we can think, then you have to appreciate you can't calm them any longer. So what we have to do instead is be their friend because they're going to be able to get all the information. And in some ways, they're wise beyond their years because they literally will have more information than they will understand with their maturity how to deal with it. That's why us being involved in their lives is so important. And I'm not joking.
Mm-mm.
We've got to reconnect because there's this new problem that the American Medical Association and a lot of people around the world are finally coining technoference. Technoference is when parents, not children, are disconnected by their cell phone usage and their parenting because it's disjointed. And when kids have been asked, do you do they feel loved by their parents or do they feel they have enough time with them? They usually say, I wish they weren't on their devices as much because I would like to have more time with them.
Mm.
Technoference. You can check out on any, on any search. It's a real thing. Now, technoference is something we're all guilty of. I'm absolutely distracted um, for many hours with the research and the stuff that I do on my phone so that I can do radio and I can do these presentations. But equally, I'm aware that when I'm in this distracted mode, I have also chemistry, brain wise, I've changed. I'm in my bubble. And if someone comes up to me and wants to have a chat, I'm not really chatty. I'm actually in my tech bubble. What we have to appreciate is children really get into these tech worlds. They become absorbed in them. And so the longer we let them be in these worlds, they stop being able to be in the real world because the real world feels very awkward. They know how to press buttons and affect virtual things, but they don't know how to touch and how to stroke and how to love. And that's why technoference is so important because parents have to relearn how to connect with their children by stopping using those devices.
Mm. And to show them the example too of real human connection. You know, you and I had a conversation one time about social media and technology in general and its influence on people and how much it's changed our social interactions. Because the premise is that it's supposed to connect us and help us stay connected to people all around the globe. But the reality is that social media is sort of like the junk food of social interaction, where we as humans have a necessary human need and desire not only to interact but to connect with other humans. And doing it through a screen via technology is sort of like, we were calling it the junk food version, meaning you get some you get some quick fix, but it's not lasting nourishment. It doesn't actually fulfill or satisfy that need to satiate that human need that we all have. So when it comes to children, just imagine how difficult and confusing that would be to grow up in this world where not a lot of people have and really cherish those real interactions anymore, and social interactions are considered interacting with friends and family. That's a very different view of the world. So let's talk a bit about the influence of social media and your views on social media addictions. What do people need to know about that, and how can it be harmful, especially for children?
Well, that's that's how we started. That's why we started writing this book, Killer Tech and the Drive to Save Humanity. And guys, really want to make it clear if anyone is struggling with their children, struggling with social media addiction themselves, wondering what's going to happen with AI and your jobs, I really recommend you get the book, not because I'm trying to make lots of money on it. No, it's actually my blueprint of how to make your lives better and mine. And I'm actually following that blueprint. You know, in the book, I talk about taking it local. Well, Kim and I are taking this fight locally. We're taking it to the streets. We are not going to be satisfied with just being another influencer. I am actually a real technologist. And so I'm talking from a perspective of what I know is possible. And that's a different take. It's a take that we all need to embrace. Um, the truth is, social media is really about you watching your own bias. And I always laugh because when I say that to people, they first of all reject it usually. And they reject it because they don't understand what I just said. So I'm going to explain it. Social media is based on keeping your eyeballs glued to a platform as long as possible. And what social media does is it actually entices you by trying to suggest new videos that are referenced by what you just watched. So ultimately, your preferences eventually become the bias in which that algorithm tries to keep you on the platform. But you have to appreciate you're now starting to watch things you like to watch, not necessarily real news, not necessarily the world's perspective, but your perspective. Because the more you stay on the platform, the funnel gets narrower and narrower towards your interests to zero in on how to keep you on the platform the longest. It's really sad that things that are so enjoyable, like watching TikToks and Instagrams and YouTubes, you actually are being curated by an AI, an artificial intelligence learning algorithm that basically learns from your interaction how to feed you more content that you probably are going to like. And then you have thousands of programmers behind the scene that are actually working all day long to figure out how to fine tune these algorithms to addict or to keep you on or to entice you to watch their content. That is why I have to do this mission. I understand what and how and why we got here. And it's all to do with advertising revenue, big data, using data to generate more revenue and more advertising. You know, what people don't realize is big business works on microtransactions. In this is really true. For example, credit card companies make money by the microtransactions between banks having to transfer money between each other to vendors, etc. And those little microtransactions built the credit card companies and made them billion dollar interests. Well, the same thing applies to social media. They need the advertising. So where you go and how what you click towards and what you like is sold and they make money on that. And then if you want to look up like drapes, now they're going to sell your present mood, your present condition to advertisers to basically serve you information right then and there that you're actually might be looking at because you made a request for drapes in your YouTube video search. So, or Instagram or whatever. So, what I want people to realize is that you make your own addiction happen. The more you stay on a platform, the more you program it to entice you, and the more you stay on.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's not necessarily bad, but
Right.
the question is, when do we say enough? And then when you get to kids, do you now appreciate that if we're distracted and our kids are distracted, how is that going to create a loving, sympathetic, empathic individual later on in life if their interactions are always disjointed? That's where we come in. If we want a better world, we really have to look at ourselves. We need to start loving again. And I don't want to sound like a hippie, but the truth is we are not loving our children if we're distracted on our phones. And it's interesting because our phones, that means the algorithms are really working, are more enticing than our children.
Hmm. You know, it's an interesting concept as well. When we talk about leading by example and what we're showing our kids, whether or not we're telling them, what are we showing them? What kind of example are we setting? And to your point, it's not that these algorithms are necessarily nefarious, it's that it's a free service like this one that we're watching this video on. It's a free service that we get to use. So they get to advertise to us. That's essentially fair. Now, for adults, we should have that discipline and that awareness to say, I'm going to have one ice cream today, and I'm good with that. Children would probably not stop after one ice cream if they had the ability to grab 2 or 10 more, right? So the huge difference here is that adults should know better, or at least know what's best for them. But when children are using these platforms, they don't know when to stop. They don't necessarily notice the impact it's having on them. They don't know the long-term effects or how it affects their other social interactions. So when we come down to solutions, I very much appreciate your balanced approach, because once again, it's not up to big bad tech to solve this problem for us. Yes, there is a shared responsibility, and what is our role in that responsibility? Like any
So
tool.
the Senate is just trying to pass right now a bill through the Congress, and I hope it does pass because it is at least a good step in the right direction. That on kids' accounts, you can turn off the algorithm and keep the searches directly predicated on what they're searching for. In other words, dumb down the algorithm to just say if they're looking for puppies, it just stays in puppies. It doesn't deviate from puppies. Now, that's called forking or branching. And so basically, instead of branching like a tree in all different directions of trying to find and fine tune your interests, the algorithm is dumbed down to be very specific. Now, that would be a start because kids don't know what they don't know. And if you want to keep innocence, an innocent kid's not going to make um, an inappropriate call. And if they do, this is what's important. And it's an age restricted device because we know that the kid's not 18, then the algorithm should shut them down. With the same intelligence that if you mention COVID or if you mention Jan 6, things are shut down with banners and warnings. But the truth is, those warnings and those banners come up automatically. And that means we have the intelligence and the raw horsepower to be able to flag when kids are getting into bad situations and we're not aggressive enough. I think the platforms are starting to do some good and the Senate has come in, but now we got to get the Congress to pass this stuff. And again, remember I said we have to do everything in layers?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this would be another set of
Right.
layers. So if we get more kid-friendly algorithms in place, that would be a huge um, innocence preserver. And in addition to that, it would actually be the first time we've actually really made a dent in the addiction cycle that the kids are experiencing.
Right.
And back to parents, in many ways, you also need the same switch to go back to real searches So you stop going down rabbit holes and stop getting distracted from parenting your kids. And grandparents, the same thing applies, and the same thing applies to all of us. So ultimately, I think we need more control on how these services treat us. But wait, there's one thing that's important. These services also need to make money if they're giving us a service. So there has to be a trade. So I don't expect perfection. What I expect is everyone does their part, and we put the children first over revenue. Then 18 and above, it's a free for all. But I do believe if we're going to acknowledge addiction, then the social media companies should actually put filters on the AI for adults also to help them not be as addicted to their platforms. Because isn't 4 hours enough to get your advertising time when the average American spends 4 hours a day on their phone? Is that not enough advertising dollar? I mean, I understand you might want to go to 5 or 6 hours, but you're starting to hurt your actual customer. You're hurting their families. You're hurting us. So I'm asking everyone to be involved. I'm not trying to demonize any particular one party because it's an all-inclusive solution.
Right. So, if we were to break this down into a call to action, what do you think are the top two most important things that parents need to do today or need to be aware of in order to protect their children?
Get into their environment, learn what they're looking at. Number one. Number two, make sure if you've not done it, you you create a sandbox, an environment for them, like the Bark app or something. And if you're not willing to do that, then at least make sure that your network is not opened up to bringing in the world, bringing every porn site in. There's plenty of companies and plenty of technology softwares that will stop and prevent that coming into your personal network in your home. And I want parents to research and figure out a defense in layers of how they're going to protect their children and realize they also need to be disciplined enough to realize that the technoference is coming from them. And the American Medical Association feels it's bad enough that they're declaring this a true problem, something that we have to now really worry about. And it's brand new. This has been developed since 2010 through 12 and then really escalated. And what does this mean? Technoference means that we have some unhappy, suicidal children that don't believe they're loved.
Mm,
That's really sad.
it is.
So I want us to improve that. And remember, guys, we can, because this is a local solution. Touch your children too every day. I know that's something that we forget. If we're on devices, you're not touching something that is human, and our humanity is literally compromised. When you're in the device bubble, you are not a human. You're part cyborg and you're part human because your brain is interfacing with AI, with technology. So the idea of technoference being taken out of your life and you stop using device interference, but you start interacting with your children, you start touching them, hugging them, being there. That will create the next generation of children, just like with soft drinks, just like with cigarettes, that will have better digital hygiene because they will have been brought up with it and understand why it's so important. And it's really us educating each other and us coming together and helping each other that will change the world.
Mm.
And I want you and me, as I bring this to a close tonight, to really understand us. You and I, Kim, have come to this world with our personal stories, which we won't go into tonight, but I will just tease people. We will be discussing these stories in many more episodes of these things. But the cool part is that we have a reason to be talking to people about this stuff. I personally grew up in an entertainment family, and I grew up with some pretty exceptional situations that occurred that changed my worldview. So I want people just to appreciate I'm not doing this because this is fun. I'm doing this because I'm convicted to change as many people's perspective on technology as I can. So that way we create a better world for the next generation. That's what I'm all about. And so what can people do? Change your perspective. Stop the technoference. Get involved with your children's activities. Put passwords first on your list to actually augment so you don't get hacked. Realize that there is truly your information's out there if you're an American, and anything can go wrong now. And take more responsibility for your digital life. There comes, and therefore, digital hygiene. That's my spiel for tonight. And I just hope tonight I've changed at least one person's mind.
Completely. And I really appreciate the education and the influence that you're putting out there. Because, like you said, neither of us are doing this for any type of notoriety. It's because we've seen too much in our own perspective of the world, in our lived experiences, and the work that we do today. We've seen not only the dangers, but also some very solvable problems that we want to bring to people's minds so that they're, first of all, aware of the layers, because there's always multiple aspects to any problem and to any solution. But when it comes to kids, all excuses, all bets should be off when it comes to whatever is inconvenient or the other excuses we've heard. It's really about what can be done. So we're presenting different ideas that we hope people will consider. We're also bringing together the experts for a solutions-oriented dialogue. I've seen the need to do this not only in the realms of technology, cybersecurity, law enforcement, and also tech giants, but bringing in the advocacy groups and the survivors, the parents and caretakers, the psychologists. There's people in different realms of this dialogue that need to be heard. And more importantly, we need to come together so we can actually talk together and decide on solutions that are tangible, practical, and effective. So I want to thank everybody for listening and for being part of this movement and part of this dialogue. We do want to invite you to join us with your questions, your concerns, your feedback. We want to address them. We want to make sure to get answers to these questions. And we are definitely working towards solutions. So we appreciate you guys interacting with us live tonight and those also watching the replay wherever you may be. Thank you again for listening. Please leave us your feedback in the comments or please reach out to us. We want to hear from you. Please know that both Mark Stross and I are very open-minded. There's not much that could really shock us or turn us away from a subject when it comes to the real problems and the real solutions in protecting children in our modern age where most, if not all of them, have access to the digital world. So Mark Stross, my friend, thank you so much for your insights and everything you've shared today. Definitely look forward to the next one. And thank you everybody for listening and for watching and for interacting. And ICAC Sandy Detective, you are my hero too. Thank you all.
Good night, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.